go through a quick update, and then I'm going to turn it over to Carl Morton from University of Oxford to present on his long COVID data. I always say trying to plan for an in-person meeting, but it's always in the back burner if anyone has ideas. No new papers yet, other than these papers that were accepted from our group. But if you have any papers that you guys have worked on and I don't have here, please let me know so I could highlight it here. Some basic updates. People are working on this long COVID case study by Al at University of Davis. He's sent some new data, so people want to hop on this. We're trying to get this interesting case report for this long COVID case that that the patient had agreed to share the data with, and there's lots of data there to actually go through. It's an interesting case, but if interested, let us know. We could hop on that project with him and help write that paper. Okay, so let's just try to dive into it because I don't want to eat up too much in Carl's time for his presentation. Just some recent news. We know. I just thought some of these articles were interesting. That we know that in the U.S. and also around Europe and a lot of other places around the world, those COVID trackers are basically shutting down, no longer sharing data. So this ABC article was talking about what that means and the impact of it. I think we all know what that means here, which is going to be harder to track what happens in the future. Some actual biology news is some news articles came out from not a paper but a presentation and an abstract that people had made at a recent meeting. But it was interesting to hear about this. This article talks about some heart issues that occur. That I think that's surprising for us here. Maybe other folks, too. That the impact on the heart and the damage it can do. There's some other. Not here, but in the coming up slide for long COVID, there's some cardiovascular issues that I'll also discuss there, and I'm sure maybe even our speaker today, Carl, might have some insight on this. But a lot of it might be related to mitochondrial issues, as we alluded to in our paper that's hopefully accepted soon with the group here. Some wastewater news, I'm sure usually have people from working on wastewater sometimes here. We had heard from a paper a few months ago from Asia that they were looking at wastewater from planes, and then this is another more recent study from the CDC that just came out today, February 24th, that said they're looking at flights with Air France coming in from this time point from August to September of last year. And they basically, not so surprising to us, but they said 81% of the international flights coming in were basically found that positive SARS-CoV-2 in the wastewater, which again, maybe reiterates that most likely on planes now, if someone's sitting next to you, that might be positive or a pretty good chance of that. On other good news, or maybe other treatment news, I saw this article here about a potential treatment that this person from Arizona State University is working on. So they're using, I'm not a plant biologist, but people might have more plant background. They're basically using a tobacco leaf extract from tobacco leaf and developing a monoclonal antibody treatment. And in their paper they show actually really positive neutralizing effects against SARS-CoV-2 and some treatment possibilities. So this could be something that's in the works for these folks. The papers, and I'll share the link with people, of course, and the paper. The PDF of this, of the presentation, of the links and everything. Some other papers and news that you might have missed. So this is relating with transmissibility of the virus and relating with the humidity. There's a paper that came out a few months ago that I presented also here that discussed this, and this kind of agrees with this, saying that overall the relative humidity, the drier the air is, the more potential of exposure or infection, basically. And they didn't just look at the coronavirus. This is a figure looking at the mouse coronavirus and the saliva. They also looked at a couple of other viruses too, the MHV virus and all that. So interesting things. So in general, they're saying, there's the drier the air is, in case you want to adjust the humidity in your house, keep it maybe at a higher or a mid-level humidity level might be better. Some long COVID thing, which will lead to what Carl will present today. or a lot of data on that. But this is the cardiovascular I hinted at earlier. There's this abstract or this presentation that's from the American College of Cardiology. The results they talk about briefly here, but basically they mentioned in a study they did looking at meta-analysis they did on in previous studies they did in these 11 major studies that indeed long COVID could double your risk in cardiovascular issues, which might not be so surprising based on what people have seen with data so far. But there's not actually a publication on this. It's just for a meeting abstract that people jumped on. So I don't know what the data is, so take it with a grain of salt, but it could be interesting to see once the paper comes out. This I thought was interesting, this scientific American article. It's kind of a nice review, an overview of what long COVID impacts on neurological diseases. So people wanted the kind of a general overview of what is known, what has been out there. This they covered it pretty nicely, and they have some nice figures linking, for example, cardiovascular impact on the neurological symptoms of long COVID, what is known, and they have references in this throughout. And usually I don't put the Twitter thing, but once in a while Twitter has some informative threads, and one is by Wes Eli that a lot of you might know, or some of you may know, who collaborates with some of us. He runs a long COVID clinic, and he's a CNS expert, and he has a nice little thread here on Twitter, just kind of summarizing what we know about CNS issues and long COVID. It's a pretty long thread, but he goes over nice papers and summary of each of those papers and how it impacts the brain in long COVID. So if you're interested, just get a quick preview or review of what's out there. He did a really nice job going over that.
Evgene, can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
on that? So like I know like herpes viruses sort of stay in nerves and then come out again. Is there any possibility that COVID viruses could do that? I mean, that SARS-CoV could stay in some kind of a structure like that?
Well, he alludes to this, and there's other papers
okay.
that have come out, that papers have come out in the past, I think, couple of months or something, that talk about how potentially the virus stays, lingers in your body longer. Whether it's replicating or not, that is not, I don't think, shown or is believed, but it does. There are papers showing that I went over too that show that, yeah, definitely. I mean, Carl might talk about this too, that the virus can persist in tissues over a long time. I think Rob Schwartz has also discussed this in the past. But how that impacts the CNS and whether this persistence is causing that or not, I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question very well.
Yeah, that's
okay.
as good an answer as any. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. And maybe Carl might have some insight when he presents on long COVID and how that might.
Yeah, Afshin, Eve, Dr. Chris Palmer, if you haven't seen him, has done a lot of work on COVID mitochondrial disorders as a primary etiology for neurological disorders. Might look him up.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so let's just keep going. So I want to give Carl enough time to speak. This COVID dashboard, so just the distribution, the U.S., as we know, and I think the rest of the world is following along, which I'll show you in a second, is that the XBB.1.5 is pretty much taking over as expected. And the wastewater, which is usually a nice indication of, since the testing is not as reliable, you see the decrease happening. This is just nationally, U.S., the regionally is going down. This is where I live in Middlesex County, although there seems to be a little plateau here. I don't know if that's going to keep going down, but the trend is there. Again, XBB.1.5 is the trend northeast, and then the rest of the U.S. is taking over that. Of course, there's other variants, but they're very low, and they're not of concern because of their, the main ones out competing everyone else. Globally, the trends are about the same. This is kind of a little messier, but if you do a more macro scale of it, like that Europe, Hong Kong, South America, Japan, so on and so on, you see that overall the cases are, again, case counts are going to be less and less reliable to look at. So maybe hospital admissions might be a better one, but not every country or region reports that. Maybe ICU might be better to look at. But overall, it seems like, and that's going down. And wastewater in the U.S. is good in other places. Maybe we start looking at the regions going down. And Brazil's same way. South America, they usually follows Brazilian trends. And same with Japan. So that's a really quick view of everything, not the usual long news and everything. There hasn't been much. I haven't seen that many papers coming out this past week that have been new on long COVID. But That's what I really wanted to go quickly and give Carl. I don't know if there's any quick questions or comments before I turn it over to Carl Morton.